Hello everyone and welcome to Studio Jake. I of course am your host, Jacob Airy. Welcome to my channel and or Facebook page if you're listening on Facebook. I am going to be talking about one of my favorite science fiction franchises of all time. Of course, I'm talking about Star Trek. I'm going to give some updates about the franchise that have come from CBS and Viacom, which I think are really important and I think are fantastic. So I'm not sure what some of the specifics are, but I'm going to read you some rumors. With that in mind, be sure to like this video, share it out. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to my channel and ring the little bell because YouTube does this weird thing where they curate your subscription feed so you're not seeing it in chronological order anymore, so you might miss me. Just ring the bell, that way you at least get a notification whenever I do one of these videos. If you're on Facebook, like this video, share it out. If you're on my Facebook page, author Jacob Airy, get notifications from there as well, like that page, and turn on all the gadgets so you get information whenever I post new videos. With that said and that in mind, welcome to Studio Jake. Welcome back. Now, Star Trek is one of my favorite science fiction franchises. I actually tend to like more of the movies and even shows that a lot of people don't. I just appreciate the franchise and I enjoy the TV shows and the films, even the ones, like I said, that aren't as popular. If I'm not mistaken, the two most popular series from the franchise of all time is, of course, the original series, which is really good. It is a little bit of a product of its time, but it is good. And also Star Trek The Next Generation. I tend to go back and forth between whether I like The Next Generation or Voyager better. And it usually depends on the time of day, but typically Next Generation usually comes about on top for me. I'm not a big fan of Deep Space Nine. I watched the whole series, just not a huge fan of it. I really feel like that's when they were testing the waters for woke Star Trek. I know that sounds weird because woke wasn't really a term when Deep Space Nine first came out, but it was definitely politically correct. I mean, definitely. If you watch the show, you'll know what I'm talking about. Of course, there was Star Trek Enterprise, which I did enjoy it, but I felt like their whole thing with the they called it the temporal Cold War that the crew gets involved with, where they're working with agents from the future there are some agents who are trying to change the past and some trying to keep it the same. And I just felt like that series or that arc ran too long because it goes through 2 seasons and you're kind of like and it wasn't like X-Files where there were these turns or they would close the book on some of the characters that were elongated. It just kind of overextended itself. Of course, there's Star Trek Discovery, and I tended to have an unpopular opinion. I actually liked the show. I think it's good. It's not fantastic. It's definitely, well, it is in the visual effects department, but I always feel like the main character is the least interesting character. I always feel like the captain of the ship, because it's usually the captain is the main character, but in Discovery they're doing the science specialist. She's the main character, but I just feel like with the writing, the captain is always the most interesting character, and of course season 3 is coming soon. So all that said, that's kind of just my shorthand thoughts of the show, our shows. But Viacom CBS recently had like I believe it was a quarterly meeting. It was their Q4 2019 earnings conference call, and CBS was live tweeting them. And a special thanks to Jorge Arenas from Bounding into Comics. I've quoted them quite a bit for capturing all these tweets and for holding them into place and writing this really great article about them. I highly recommend going into Bounding in Comics and reading their piece on it, CBS provides major update on future Star Trek franchise. So the first tweet is on the heels of Star Trek Picard on CBS All Access, which broke records for total streams and subscriber signups. We're now taking the Star Trek franchise and extending it across the house. So they're releasing Star Trek Picard once a week. It's not like a regular streaming where everything comes out at once and you can binge watch it. They're doing what Disney did with The Mandalorian, where they're releasing it one episode at a time, and the problem with Picard so far is it shows Picard on this mission with some new characters. My problem with it is the new characters aren't that interesting. I am really just interested in what Picard is doing, played of course by Patrick Stewart. I'm not interested in the new characters. They're not that compelling to me. None of them. Zero zip zilch. They're not the series. They clearly made the series to be binge watched like Star Trek Discovery, but then they realized people just probably watch the first season and drop out. So they're releasing it episodically, but the show is really meant to be binged. It's not like The Mandalorian, where at least, even though The Mandalorian had this overall arc that had a significant role in each episode, but then they also did some episodes that were standalone. But with Picard, everything is connected. And I'll do a more full review when the season is over, because I'm afraid if I say anything more, it will spoil the show. But CBS continues. Building on Discovery and Picard, we now have 2 additional series in production at CBS and Nickelodeon, and 2 more series in development, plus a series of Picard novels being rolled out at Simon & Schuster, and a highly anticipated new Star Trek film from Paramount Picks. So they didn't go into details about the shows, but according to Bounding into Comics, in 2019, Alex Kurtzman, who was taking the reins of Star Trek, he said that they're working on a Star Trek series called Star Trek Lower Decks with Rick and Morty executive producer Mike McMahon. And that one is expected to go on CBS All Access. According to Kurtzman at the time, the spirit of each of these shows has to feel very different. Mike's show for CBS All Access is really for kids. I would say from 11 to 70, laughs. What I love so much about the way Mike is doing is planning things. What you would typically be the A story on any normal Star Trek episode is happening in the background, like a huge crazy bleep is going on in the background on Lower Decks, and that's super peripheral to the story that you're actually focused on. No Trek show has ever really done that before. So the second series, we don't know what it's about, and this is the one being developed at Nickelodeon, and it's being developed by the Hageman brothers. Kurtzman said the Hageman brothers are doing, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, it could be Hageman, the way things are pronounced these days, so forgive me, let me know in the comments if I'm mispronouncing it. The Hageman brothers are doing an animated show for Nickelodeon, and that will be entirely different from Lower Decks. I want to announce the name of the Nickelodeon show, but that's really a different show. That's a show for kids, gender, full CGI animation. It's going to be incredibly cinematic. We just started seeing storyboards this week. It looks like, wow, it's on par with Love, Death, and Robots in terms of beauty and lighting and cinema, so it's really different feel, and Nickelodeon has been wildly supportive, and I think very exciting to bring a new energy to TV, in animation. So for those of you familiar, Love, Death, and Robots is a series of shorts on Netflix that have like these bizarre events, and they usually take place in the future, and it was incredibly, I watched it, tons of foul language, tons of very gory violence, just like the name implies, and some unnecessary nudity that just came from nowhere in some episodes. Like, for instance, one episode was this mysterious artist. He paints like these really beautiful paintings of space and the sky, and he starts adding like a strip of this really odd looking colored blue in all of his paintings. And then at the end of the episode, spoiler alert, you find out that this guy is actually an android who was a pool cleaner, but just over time, people kept adding upgrades and upgrades and upgrades until finally he was like this fully realized android who acts and talks like a human and can even paint. And it turns out that he wants to go back to being that pool cleaning robot, which is where the strip of blue comes from, because he realized he was happier when he was accomplishing just a simple little task. It was a really weird episode. So he also provided details. This is back to Bounding in Comics. He also provided details on Star Trek Discovery spin-off Section 31 starring Michelle Yeoh. In June 2018, he indicated the show would begin shooting as soon as they have wrapped up Discovery Season 3. So for those of you unfamiliar with Michelle Yeoh's character, she was a captain at the beginning of Season 1 of Discovery who gets killed in a battle with the Klingons, and that's actually what kicks off the Federation-Klingon War. And it, and spoiler alert for Season 1, they go to the Mirrorverse, and she is there but it's her Mirrorverse version, and she's the Empress of the Federation, or the Terran Empire, as it's called in the Mirrorverse. So they bring that character back, and Section 31 hires her, and they're kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Section 31 is Starfleet's intelligence operation. They were featured prominently in Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Enterprise. Discovery Season 2 is when they kind of played a more prominent role in like a Star Trek series. So they were saying that they might give Michelle Yeoh a spin-off where she is an agent of Section 31. I would be interested to see that. They would have to do a very interesting secret agent. It would be kind of gray-ish, as far as the morals, because usually Star Trek, the creator of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, he wasn't a socialist, but he was very liberal, and so he made the Federation out to be this sort of liberal utopia, right? So there's no money, and because there's no money, no one's competing against each other, and somehow that eliminates poverty. They don't really explain that, but they always show that in comparison to other aliens. So for instance, the Ferengi, who are featured prominently in Deep Space Nine, they're hyper-capitalists, so they have very large income inequality, and it's all about getting rich, and it's made to show like the greedy capitalists. And then Romulans are supposed to represent kind of Russian communism. It's very stale, it's very, very fearful, they rule by fear. The Cardassians are meant to show a military dictatorship, and so on. It's all, if you watch the show, you'll pick up on these themes. It's pretty obvious. They don't try to hide the ball. So no one knows what the fourth series is, but and Bounding into Comics is reporting a rumor that it would be a Captain Pike series spinoff. Now, Captain Pike was a main character in Star Trek Discovery. Basically, what happens is Starfleet detects these signals in the deep regions of space, and they originally were going to dispatch the Enterprise to investigate. However, the Enterprise gets incredibly damaged in their attempt to reach the first signal, and so while the Enterprise is in disrepair, they give Captain Pike, played by Anson Mount this time around, the role of Captain of the Discovery while the Enterprise is being repaired. And I really liked that season. I thought it was better than Season 1. I thought Anson Mount was fantastic as Captain Pike. They did a great job with the character. They didn't try to bog him down in politically correct storylines. He's just a good man, a good captain, and that really shows. And I really enjoyed it, and I hope that they do an Enterprise spin-off with Captain Pike at the helm. That would be fantastic. I think it would be great. They explain where the Enterprise is during the Klingon War, and to explain its absence during Discovery. and I really hope that they succeed in doing that. I think that would be a fantastic show, a fantastic series, especially with Anson Mount. Anson Mount wants to do it, but he said he wanted more creative control over Pike, and I think that's what's slowing down the announcement. So, um, they're getting a comic books reports that it's also um, a Star Fleet Academy series, but on the other hand, that could be the one on Nickelodeon. So that could be possible. What gives credence to the Enterprise rumor is Kurtzman discussed it. He said, "I would be remiss in saying you're going to see Spock again on Discovery because we've obviously jumped so far into the future that it wouldn't make sense. But the idea of bringing Ethan Peck back and Anson Mount and Rebecca Romanjan, I hope I pronounced that right, and the Enterprise, I mean, we loved it so much, and to find a way to do that is definitely something we're thinking about." And I hope they do. I honestly do. Um, I think they kind of, in a way, they almost ruined Discovery because now it's hard to picture Discovery without Captain Pike at the helm. It just really is. So as far as the movies, of course, I've talked to everyone about this on my blog. I have one of the rumors going around was that Quentin Tarantino was going to get a Star Trek film, and I just think that's a terrible idea. Quentin Tarantino is a grindhouse director who gets A-list budgets. And sure, maybe I've not seen very many, so I know I'm not exactly the expert on Tarantino, but I cannot see him directing a Star Trek film. I just don't think so. But he would later say, I think I'm steering away from Star Trek. And also, even though all this buzz was being generated around him, it turned out he hadn't even talked about Paramount officially about a Star Trek film. So then later, Fargo creator Noah Hawley was attached, and the rumor, though, is that they rejected the script for being too Trekky. Again, this is coming from Bounding into Comics. I don't know how a Star Trek script can be too Trekky, so we don't know for sure. And also, no one was really sure because they were saying that it's yet to be discovered if this new film is going to be set in the original timeline or if they're going to do a show based in the Kelvin timeline. So Noah Hawley's script was rumored to be a sequel to Star Trek Beyond, which I actually, and I know this isn't an unpopular opinion. I've been raked on the coals over it when it comes to this thing. It's but I actually enjoy Star Trek Beyond. I thought it was a good film. I didn't think it was a great film. It obviously wasn't as good as the first one with Chris Pine as Captain Kirk. Obviously, that one was the best. It wasn't even as good as Star Trek Into Darkness, but I did think Star Trek Beyond. The only problem I had with it was the villains. The villain's motivations were incredibly vague, and that I did have an issue with because I thought that his motivations for what he was up to were very, very just kind of general. There weren't any specific goals he had in mind. He was a veteran of a war of the Federation's war with Kronos and or excuse me, Romulan of the Romulan Empire, not Kronos. And so well, anyway, go watch it. It's definitely underrated. I think people had a problem with it because it felt more like an extended episode of a series instead of a movie, so it had like a TV movie vibe, just with better special effects. And I think that is true, but I still thought it was good. I like TV movies, so I don't know why that would be a big deal. So, I think I think this idea that the first draft of the script was rejected is probably true, but I don't think they're telling Noah Hawley you can't direct a film because we don't like this script. Unless he's saying I don't want to edit it, I don't see them just outright directing it. Noah Hawley or Haley. I don't know how to pronounce it. Let me know in the comments. These celebrities and these names. Anyway, for Noah's script, I don't think they would outright reject him because he has led several great shows, and some that have been critically acclaimed, like Fargo and Legion. So I don't see them outright saying, "We hated your script, ergo you can't direct another Star Trek movie ever." I just don't see that happening. But I don't know. Again, hat tip to Bounding into Comics for digging up all this information. Personally, I would like to see a Star Trek series based in the time of Enterprise B, which is immediately following, um, I guess, the undiscovered country, that's when Enterprise B takes place. Enterprise A gets, I don't think Enterprise A gets destroyed in the Star Trek canon. I think they just retire it because it's old. It's a running joke in the films, is Enterprise A is an old ship. So they commission the Enterprise B as an Excelsior class, and of course they show a little bit of Enterprise B in the film Star Trek Generations, which has both William Shatner and Patrick Stewart as Captain Kirk and Captain Picard, respectively. So I would like to see that, or Enterprise C. I would love to see the in-between Enterprises explored more, and maybe as a film series if they don't want to commit to a television show. That's just my personal take. I would love to see that in-between era where stuff like the replicator and holograms are being developed. I think that would be really, really good. Anyway, that's all the time I have for today. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know in the comments below what Star Trek show or movie you're excited about. Would you like to see a Captain Pike spinoff? Would you like to see a sequel to Star Trek Beyond? Would you like to see them move forward in the original timeline? Let me know in the comments below. And with that in mind, follow me on Twitter at RealJacobAry. Facebook is Author Jacob Airy. Instagram is Real Jacob Airy. YouTube channel is Studio Jake. And of course, you can find more of my work on my blog, jacobairy.blog. That's JACOBAIREY.blog. And of course, you can pick yourself up a copy of my fantasy novel, The Seven Royals All Good Things, about Prince Jasher leading some of your favorite fairy tale characters into battle against an evil mage so they can free their homeland. With that in mind, I'll see you next time, right here on Studio Jake.